Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my YouTube channel. Since the world is slowly collapsing and I've been in quarantine here for 3 weeks working my way through Netflix, I thought it would be time to do something which I've always wanted to do, which is to start this channel. So now I'm here. Today I thought I would be showing you how I do my basic stage makeup. This is the makeup that I do for most performances. The makeup that I'm using today is a mix of drugstore and higher end products, so it's not necessarily makeup that is meant for the stage, but I have tested it all. I find that they don't make my skin break out, they don't come off when I start sweating. Even if the dance world is kind of on hold right now, I thought it would be fun to do this anyway, because you never know when we'll be back on stage and maybe you can learn something new today. So yeah, that's it. Let's get started. So today I'm going to start by using the Milk Makeup Hydrogrip Primer. This is an adhesive primer instead of a pore blurring one, and I find that works much better on stage since the foundation really sticks to the skin. I find that sometimes with the pore blurring ones the foundation can slide around on top of it. Usually what I do is take a few pumps and massage it into my face and let it dry for 1 to 2 minutes. Next, I like to spray my face with some MAC Fix Plus. Maybe this is kind of an unnecessary step, but I find it makes my foundation stick even better on top of my skin when I start sweating. So for foundation, I tend to switch around a lot. It really depends on what I'm dancing, the season, how my skin is. But today I'm going to be using the Hourglass Vanish Seamless Foundation Stick in the shade Vanilla. It has kind of a waxy consistency, so the sweat kind of rolls on top of it instead of sticking to it. I'm going to be applying it using a brush instead of a beauty blender because I just find that works better with this specific foundation. And I'm using small circular motions instead of tugging ones and blending it all over my skin, especially into my hairline. Also, it's really important because you don't want that demarcation line because you really see that on stage. When I'm done blending the foundation all over my face, I like to take whatever's left on the brush and blend it over my ears. For me, this is a super important step since my ears tend to get really red when I'm dancing and they kind of stick out a little bit. So I end up looking like a traffic light if I don't do that. And also please do not forget to blend the foundation down your neck so that you match your face's skin tone with your body's. For concealer, I'm going to be using the Tarte Shapetape in the shade Light. This is a super important step since we start framing our face and start thinking about where the light is going to be hitting it on stage. What I like to do is to start drawing a little triangle from the inner corner of my eye down to my nose and blending it outwards over my cheek. How you place your concealer is of course a little bit individual from person to person since we all have different face shapes, but for me it works to take what's ever left on the brush, put it in between my eyebrows, on the tip of my nose and on my chin. Next, I like to take my beauty blender and actually wet it with a little bit more Fix Plus. I use Fix Plus on everything. I just find it makes the makeup stay so much better. I give it a little squeeze and I like to start with the tip of my beauty blender, press it in towards the corner of my eye and use very slight dabbing motions. You don't want to be pulling the concealer, you really want to have a light hand and not try to take any product away from there, just push it into the skin and blend out the corners. Before your concealer starts creasing, you want to set it with some powder. I'm going to be using the Mercier Loose Setting Powder in the shade Translucent. I like to just put a little bit of powder in the lid of my pan and swirl my brush around inside and dab the excess product off. You want to start again by using small dabbing motions. You don't want to be doing too much swiping since the bristles of the brush could leave traces in your foundation. We want to be pushing product into the skin, not swiping it away from it. After setting my entire face, I like to take my damp beauty blender, coat it in lots of setting powder and bake under my eyes. I do this to contour even further and also to protect from any fallout that could be happening when I put on my eyeshadow. I'm using the same motion as I did when I was doing the concealer, and I also contour my nose like this. So for eyebrows, I have pretty dark and thick eyebrows, so I don't necessarily tend to do very much with them. I usually just take the darkest shade in my contour palette and fill them in and just accentuate the shape of them a little bit better. After that, I like to just set it with any brow gel. Today I'm going to be using the Glossier Boy Brow in the shade Brown. So to prime the eyes, I'm going to be using the Nars Soft Matte Complete Concealer in the shade Vanilla. I find that it's perfect to blur out any veins that are peeking through and to give the eyeshadow a nice bright base that's long lasting. I can't stress how important this step is. After blending out the entire base, I'm going to be using the shade Aura from the Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals Volume 1 palette to set the base. I'm using a round fluffy brush and circular motions to do that. Next, I'm dipping into the matte version of the shade Soothe. I find this is the perfect transition color. You definitely want to start off by not coating your brush too much. I find it's much better to dip in several times with little product on the brush to ensure the best blend. After your crease is fully blended, we want to start defining it a little bit more. I'm using the shade Story to do so, which is the burnt orange matte shade from the palette. And I switched to a slightly more pointy, fluffy brush so I can work in a little bit more detail and really focusing the color on the outside of the crease using really small motions. And once again, you don't want to dip in too much product on the brush. You kind of want to use a light hand and dip in several times if you need to. To start blending the color with the lower part of the lid, you can use the same brush with very little product on it and just slightly, very slightly drag it down on the lower lid. And after that, I just go back in with the same brush that I started the crease with, just to blend everything together once again and to make sure that the colors mesh properly. To start defining my eyes even more, I'm going to be dipping into the shade Ritual, which is the dark chocolatey brown shade from the palette. I'm using a smaller fluffy brush so I have more precision, and instead of using big swirling motions, I would definitely recommend using smaller padding ones. This is to make sure that the product doesn't go everywhere on your cheeks, since we're using a really dark brown shade. And next I switch the brush around using the same side that I used on the burnt orange, and I dip that into the same shade and I blend it up into my crease, but still really keeping it on the outside. If you ever find that something's not looking blended enough, you can always go back in with that first big fluffy brush with almost no product on it, just to blend out the corners. Next, using that same precision brush, I'm going to be dipping into the black shade of the palette, Memory. Basically repeating the same thing as I did with the brown shade, but really focusing it on the lash line. Finally happy with the blend of your eyeshadow, it's time to cut the crease. I'm doing so using a very flat brush with the same concealer shade that we used to prep the eye. I find that this step is so important. It makes your eyes look so much bigger on stage and really makes them pop, and I really find that the biggest mistake that dancers make is to make their eyes too dark, because then from far they can just look like two holes instead of eyes. Dipping into that same pale shade from the palette using a flat brush, I'm just going to set the concealer that we laid down and make sure it's all blended perfectly. As you can see, I'm really blending the white shade upwards towards my eyebrow. This is a trick that I learned from one of the makeup artists in the theater. It's basically, once again, just to make your eyes look even bigger. After brushing away any fallout or excess loose powder, we're going to start working on the lower lash line. I mean, basically we're just going to repeat the same steps as we did in the upper lash line, but kind of in miniature form. I'm using that same fluffy precision brush, starting with the burnt orange shade, keeping it close to the lash line, and then the dark chocolate shade, keeping it on the very outer corner. Now for the fun part, I'm switching to the Caia Costmetics palette and dipping into the shade Ibiza, which is this gorgeous white sparkly shade, to highlight my brow bone and inner corner of my eye. Eyeliner, I'm going to be using the Huda Beauty Lifeliner. Please wipe off the brush before you start putting on your eyes so that you don't get eyeliner everywhere. This is literally the most water resistant eyeliner I've ever tried, so I'd honestly only recommend using it if you're pretty secure with it, because if you mess up, there's basically no going back. You have to remove your entire eyeshadow with an oil-based cleanser, because not even water or micellar water would take this off. But it's great for stage because you can sweat all over it and nothing's gonna happen. I just do a very small flick just to elongate the shape of my eye, not a big wing or anything. I flip the eyeliner around using the waxy side, and I focus the eyeliner on the outer corner of my eye and blending it out with a smaller brush afterwards. After popping on some fake lashes off camera, I'm going to be finishing off the eyes using the L'Oreal Lash Paradise mascara. This mascara is so cheap and so good. It doesn't say that it's water resistant, but I never had any problems with it. For contouring, I'm going to be using the Shade and Light palette from Kat Von D, dipping into the lightest cool brown shade from the palette using a contouring brush. I'm going to start carving out my cheekbones. Also using a really light hand. It's better to dip in several times than to put a lot of product on the brush at once, and really making sure to blend it into my hairline. I'm also going to be contouring my hairline and jawline. The amount of contour on your forehead also depends on how big your forehead is, but I think everyone should do it, since when you pull your hair back into a ballet bun, you don't want to be seeing a white mark there, so really blend it into the hairline. Using that same cool brown shade and a round fluffy brush, I'm going to be contouring my nose. I like to start from the top of my eyebrow and softly blend it all the way down to the tip of my nose, creating a small triangular shape. If you feel like you overdid your contour a little bit, you can always go back in with your beauty blender with any leftover product on top of it to soften it up. For bronzer, I'm going to be using the Marc Jacobs bronzer in the shade Tan-Tastic. I'm using a really big fluffy brush with very little product on top of it, and basically what you want to do is just to soften up that contour you did to make it look all more natural. I'm just using it basically all over my face or wherever I feel necessary. For blush, I'm going to be using the Tarte Amazonian Clay 12-Hour Blush in the shade Captivating. I'm using very little product on my brush once again and kind of swirling it on the apples of my cheeks, blending it into the bronzer and contouring. For an even more dramatic look, I like to bake my jawline. This looks really cool on stage because it makes your cheekbones and jawline pop even more. For lipstick, I keep it really simple. I like to use a nude pinky shade, and I definitely prefer creamy lipstick than matte on stage, because if you're nervous and your mouth already gets dry, and if you're wearing a matte lipstick, it can restrict your acting. So something moisturizing I find is always great. Please do not use red lipstick on stage because it does not look good from far or with the stage light. To finish off, I'm going to be using MAC Fix Plus once again, spraying it all over my face and letting it dry for a minute or two. Almost done, and finally time for my favorite step, which is highlighter. I'm using the Becca highlighter in the shade C Pop, just using my fingers on the very top of my cheekbones. You don't want to be putting too much highlighter on because you don't want to look too sweaty, but it's a nice way to give the face a more natural look when you've used so much powder on top of it. I also like to put it on the tip of my nose and on my nose bridge to contour my nose even further. And here's the final result for your perfect, water resistant and durable stage makeup look. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video today. Please do not forget to press the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. You can also follow me on Instagram here. I'll be posting more videos soon. And so yeah, see you next time.